Welcome, everyone, to our session today, where we'll be hearing from three different communities on related topics that speak to lessons learned in using financial supports to reduce homelessness. First, I'd like to start by acknowledging that the conference today is taking place on unceded Indigenous lands. The Goni-Guaghaga Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather. Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationship with Indigenous and other peoples from coast to coast to coast. So our first presenters today are from Guelph, Ontario. We'll be hearing from Travis Adams and Elijah Walker. Travis oversees the diversion, outreach, and housing stability case managers operating out of Stepping Stone. Directly collaborating with our funders, Travis supports his team in obtaining municipal rental subsidies and manages landlord engagement. Travis supports a program that has successfully led to the increase of housing retention in Guelph, woohoo, that starts from successful housing assessments once an individual enters shelter to the ongoing aftercare required once housed. Travis has experience working in positions of frontline support, diversion, and rapid rehousing prior to becoming a housing program supervisor. And Elijah Walker is a program supervisor at a temporary accommodation site operating in Guelph. He oversees a location that supports 68 unique adult individuals ranging from low to high acuity of need. And the site operates as a housing-focused program that works on supporting the life skills and increased stability of residents. It's the first shelter location in the region of Wellington-Guelph that accommodates pets and couples. Elijah carries experience working in positions of frontline, outreach, case management, and works in both the adult and youth shelter sectors prior to becoming a site supervisor. So without further ado, I will call up our two first presenters.
Hey everybody, Travis and I will be sharing the mic, so just don't mind that. So today we're just going to be presenting on the strategies that we've done in Guelph, Wellington in terms of having successful outcomes with housing in private market rent.
Yeah, so basically all the strategies that we've been able to use to build that stock of housing with landlords in our community.
So who we are, so Stepping Stone, we're a nonprofit organization in Guelph. So we support adult and senior individuals who are currently experiencing homelessness, and we provide multiple programs to support them in those areas. So we are a service provider and get our funding from the County of Wellington, and that is the agency we refer individuals for subsidy.
So we're a nonprofit organization. And our focus is really with the clients we support and putting them at the forefront of everything that we do, hence the name, building from the ground up.
So just a little about our sites that we operate out of Guelph, Wellington. So we have multiple locations. So we have an emergency shelter, low barrier, that can accommodate around 35 individuals. We have a permanent supportive housing program, around 32 individuals we accommodate, and then we have 2 family shelters spread out for individuals who may need a bit more support and more independent families. We also have our housing-focused program that's a 24/7 operation that can accommodate around 64 to 68 individuals, including pets and couples. A bit about our team. So we have our housing-focused team that encompasses our outreach program, our housing stability workers. We also have a clinical team that supports the clinical needs and coordination through care coordinators, a registered social worker, and then we have our life skill workers who are our frontline.
So now that you understand a little bit more about what we do, I just wanted to chat about how we really focus as an agency of meeting people wherever they're at on the housing continuum. So we think if the supports meet people where they're at on this continuum, that there'll be no gaps. So as you can kind of see on the slide there, our support can start as soon as in the community through our prevention and diversion team. If people do end up having to come through our shelter, they can't have access to our emergency shelter. We can then transition them to our housing focus shelter if there is space there. And then we also have our housing focus outreach team as well. We're understanding that certain individuals don't want to access shelter for various reasons, so we don't want to miss out on supporting them. So our outreach team connects with people where they're at in the community. It's about 24 active encampments, 40 people that they're meeting with every week. So it's great that we're not missing out on that population. And then once people do get housed, whether that be private market rents, we do provide aftercare as well. So the housing stability worker care coordinator that's involved will follow them into the community for that follow-up support, which is great when we're focusing on housing retention, and I'll chat a bit about that later, so I don't go into too much detail there. And then we also have our permanent supportive housing. So obviously once the people that we support are housed there, they'll have that wraparound care on a day-to-day basis with all of their activities of daily living and whatever else they need. So that's just kind of a snapshot of how we're trying to be very targeted in meeting people where they're at, so that we're not missing out on any support. So now, given that background, I just wanted to kind of set the table of what the context of housing looks like in our community. It might be very similar to what everybody else is seeing in their home communities. So Wellington-Guelph has a population of about 241,000 people, and the vacancy rates are really low. So the vacancy rates are about 1.8%. And then a study done by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives found that Guelph was the fourth worst among 62 municipalities across Canada when it comes to one-bedroom affordability. So there's not a lot of units available, and it's not very affordable when it comes to one-bedroom units. The wait list for our subsidized housing is really long, which I'm sure is the case in other communities as well, as there's not a lot of new builds there. And then on top of that, we have seen an increase over the past 5 years of people that are accessing our services. So that's just a quick snapshot. 2024, we had 661 unique individuals that accessed our shelter. This year, we're at 542, so kind of on pace with that, if not slightly exceeding. So yeah, that's just the context of housing in our region. And even with that context, the housing outcomes we were able to see is through 2024, we were able to house around 228 unique individuals in private market rentals, and then 328, so an increase in 2025 to date and still counting. So since 2019, we were able to house around 1,070 people in private market rent, and we've seen this number grow year after year, given the strategies we'll go over shortly. So we have seen with this 18-month snapshot a stabilization in homelessness. So we're not seeing an increase in number through the 18th month, but kind of a stabilization. So we'd like to obviously see a decrease in homelessness, but at least we've been able to kind of level off there. So now again, it's a tough market, but we've still been able to see those successes in getting people housed. So how are we able to do that? The first strategy I wanted to talk about was financial. So we're a referring agency for a local subsidy through our county, a housing stability rental subsidy, which has really been a huge game changer for us. Since 2022, there are still 287 people that we referred that are receiving that subsidy. And then we've also had access to COB as well. So there's 328 people in Wellington-Guelph that are currently receiving that subsidy as well. So really having the buy-in from the county council in our area has been huge to kind of bridge that gap. Because if you're just waiting on that COB funding and there's limited spots available, then you're not able to house people in the meantime. So being able to access that local subsidy through the county, that operating and then being able to refer people eventually onto COB has really made a huge difference for us. Another financial consideration is our flex fund. So I know one of the future presenters is talking about a flex fund as well, so kind of ties in there. We have a flex fund that we operate through our agency, and that's made a huge impact as well. Really in a couple ways, being able to include that in the pitch to landlords so that we have that available is huge because they know there's less risk for them. If it's the fault of the tenant, that we can chip that in. So since 2022, we've contributed $49,382 towards damages. So again, just really helps both keep people housed and helps with that landlord relationship piece to be able to offer that. The next strategy we wanted to talk about was system design. And talk about early prevention. So when our diversion program started, we kind of had pilot funding and it was just me. So now that team has grown to 4 people. And it's been really great to, as an agency, we're really focused on that early prevention and trying to avoid people coming into the shelter. So I think it's really cool to see 50% of our housing placements this year are from people in the community. So we're really focusing on that housing work, everything that we used to be doing in shelter, going to viewings, helping with applications, all of those pieces in the community before they're reaching shelter. And it really helps people stay housed and avoid shelter entry. We are aware of the secondary impacts of people entering the shelter and really want to avoid that wherever we can. So really honing all of our services and supports to that early prevention, I think, has made a huge difference.
Another strategy is program design. So we've kind of accommodated our 24/7 shelter to be more housing focused. So from admissions, from intake, we have our frontline life skill workers complete ABI screeners and any other necessary assessments along with our registered social worker, who then meets to find out what these gaps in care are. We really operate from a unified team approach. So all of our housing workers, all of our frontline workers, we're all having very intentional housing focused conversations. And what we've seen with this is an increase in engagement in individuals accessing our services, wanting and being motivated to secure housing. So that unified team approach starts with informed support. So with our housing assessments, we're actually getting the individuals we serve to answer what housing is most beneficial for them. What are they looking for? Do they want permanent supportive housing? Do they want transitional housing, market rent? And from that informed support, we then identify any gaps in care or any other medical, mental health, or substance considerations that we can best support in to kind of build that housing plan for that individual. So that's something that's done right at the door as soon as they enter our program, and it's something that's ongoing through their entirety of their stay. So really just understanding these housing goals and current barriers that the individuals we support are identifying, and then working in ways to kind of support them from the beginning. Another strategy we implemented was just transforming our whole outreach program. So, we've seen with outreach in the past in our organization, it was very just referral based. So individuals our staff are going out into these encampments or into these areas people are sleeping rough, and trying to build connections, building that rapport, which we've seen often takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of trust to get that level of engagement for individuals who are choosing to not access shelter. And ended up us making referrals, we've seen the decline in engagement. So all this trust and rapport that was built is then kind of starting all over again from the ground up with whoever we're referring to. So we've now made this outreach program carry a caseload, and this caseload is very housing focused. So our outreach workers are actually going with individuals to viewings straight from encampment, and we've seen around 30 people in 2025 straight from encampments into private market rentals housed. So we've seen success in transforming that program, making it a lot more intentful.
So the next strategy is around landlord engagement. So as part of the role of anybody on our housing focused team, part of the role is landlord engagement. So managing the caseload, but also reaching out to landlords and building relationships. So we really prioritize strong ongoing connections with landlords in our community. So one thing I would say would be to focus on building team capacity, so equipping your staff to be able to engage and maintain those partnerships, include it in training, onboarding, talk to them about, what's the best pitch to landlords, what has worked for you in the past. And then if you have somebody that's really strong on your team at doing those things, really lean into that and kind of empower that as best you can. As part of this, we also have been able to do engagement events. So that's been really cool. Every about 6 months, we do a landlord appreciation lunch. It's a great opportunity to, one, thank the landlords that work with us, and two, try to build new connections. So maybe a landlord will bring a friend that's also has properties in the area, and maybe kind of conversations can snowball there. So that's been a really cool thing that if you're not doing in your area, I would really recommend, because we've been able to see a lot of good results from that. It's been really cool to see, when it first started, it was a lot of sit down and, search on Kijiji for whatever's available. But it's really cool, to put it as relationship-based housing. So relying on those relationships that you have with landlords. So when you're meeting with a person that you're supporting, you have their contact, you can reach out to them, you have your own network. So the more you can try to invest in your team, everybody on your team having their own network, then the network of the organization just grows and grows and grows from there. So it's been really cool to see that shift where we can just kind of make those calls instead of sitting down and starting from scratch. The next strategy we wanted to chat about was optimizing housing matches. So we're very intentional of our placement of the people that we're supporting. So every couple of weeks we have team discussions on units that are available that have come up to the team, and we really try to find the best fit of who's going to be most successful there. So matching considerations could be, the landlord and the tenant's preferences, the unit layout. Maybe somebody would be more successful in an apartment building compared to a basement apartment, or an apartment compared to a room rental. Just being really intentional about that, because if you try to put somebody in a spot where they're not going to be successful, it's not good for them. It's not good for the landlord relationship in the future. It just doesn't really help anyone. I know from experience, when I first started, I was like, okay, this is the next person up on my caseload that I'm trying to get housed. I'm just going to try to house them wherever I can. But that we've learned over time that that's not necessarily the best strategy. So really having those intentional conversations of what the best fit for them might be, and that leads to maximizing housing stability and positive landlord-tenant relationships. The next one is focus on housing retention. So I talked about it earlier, I believe, but those housing assessments that Eli was talking about earlier really inform our support. So we're able to see what barriers people have had in the past in maintaining their housing, what their current barriers are now, and then that really informs, once they get housed and move out into the community, what we should stay involved and help with at that time. It's also great that the worker that's been able to house them is the same one that follows them into the community, because they already have that ongoing relationship. Again, not referring it out to someone else where they might not have that same rapport. So ongoing support could be unit maintenance, guest management, rent reminders. If it's something that's more related to mental health, addiction, we can pull in other community partners or care coordinators as well. And then the results of that. So after a 12-month follow-up, 94% of our the people that we supported to get housed in 2024 have remained housed. I'd love to see that number be 100%, but the fact that 94% are remaining housed is something that we think is really great.
The last strategy we want to talk about is just focusing on priority population. So whether that be, seniors or newcomers, and then really gearing what that housing search looks like, as well as bringing in other supports, realizing that we're not the masters of all realms, and bringing in the most appropriate support. So one thing that we've done is building relationships with, retirement homes or long-term care homes, property managers, landlords, or wherever that may look like, building that network and that relationship so that when they have available units, they are reaching out to us and letting us know what is available, knowing that with the relationships we've built, we will be going to the property to provide ongoing aftercare support. And that even goes with newcomers. So in 2023, we did see a shift and an increase of newcomers to our shelters. So what we did in Guelph is kind of outsource landlords specifically targeted to wanting to support newcomers. And we were able to find landlords who intentionally wanted to house individuals who were newcomers. So in 2023, we've seen the population decrease from 30% to 0 by the end of 2023. So just another example of a strategy we use, knowing that we're not the masters of every realm and reaching out to whatever appropriate supports could be best suited.
Well, that's it for us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we're going to do questions at the end, right? Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes, we will take questions for any of our presenters at the end, but wanted to leave questions for the end in case there's anything that feeds off of one another, or maybe one presenter or two presenters can answer the same question. So just bear with me a moment while I get our next session up here. Okay, and next we will be hearing from Ron, or sorry, not Ron yet. We'll be hearing from Richard and Dawn. Richard is the Manager of Housing Benefits and Supports at the City of Toronto's Housing Secretariat. Richard leads a team of dedicated staff that deliver a range of rent supplement and housing benefit programs, including the COB, which stands for Canada Ontario Housing Benefit Program. We'll be hearing from Dawn as well. Dawn is a housing consultant with the City of Toronto's Housing Secretariat, who brings over 2 decades of experience supporting individuals who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. Her career reflects a deep commitment to housing equity, community capacity building, and the development of innovative solutions to address Toronto's complex housing challenges. So I will pass it along to our second presenters.
Thank you, Lisa. Today, Richard and I will be sharing how we use the Canada Ontario Housing Benefit to reduce homelessness in Toronto. So first, I'll give you a quick overview of what we will be discussing. We'll start by looking at the current state of homelessness in Toronto. Next, I'll provide an overview of the Canada Ontario Housing Benefit Program. We'll review outcomes that we've achieved so far and what they mean for individuals and communities. We'll highlight the city's priority groups and the critical role of our community partnerships. We'll talk about supporting tenants to ensure a successful tenancy, where we are now and the challenges we face and the lessons we've learned along the way. Every night, over 10,000 people experience homelessness in Toronto. This includes seniors, people with disabilities, and children. We've seen a dramatic increase in encampments with over 247 encampments across more than 100 parks. Shelter stays have lengthened significantly, now averaging 565 nights, up from 220 in 2020. Every day, nearly 100 people in Toronto seeking shelter space are turned away because they can't be matched to a bed. I got a warning. Housing benefits like COB are essential to helping people exit homelessness and have a safe and affordable place to call home. The Canada Ontario Housing Benefit is a joint provincial-federal initiative under the National Housing Strategy. It's a portable benefit, meaning it follows the person and not the unit, and it's designed to help households afford rent in the private market. The benefit's portable anywhere in Ontario, giving COB recipients the flexibility to choose a community that works best for them. The program was launched in 2020 and it's scheduled to end in 2029. In Toronto alone, COB currently supports over 8,000 households. This chart demonstrates our annual COB funding allocations and the number of households served each year. Each year, we've received a substantially different COB allocation, ranging anywhere from $2.2 million in year 2 to $38 million in year 4. In April 2022, the closure of COVID expansion shelters and growing number of refugee claimants and asylum seekers created unprecedented pressures on our shelter system. To ease the pressure on our shelter system, in year 3 of the COB program, we introduced the shelter relief stream as our primary referral pathway. In COB year 4, we received $38 million in funding. This was our highest allocation to date, and that year alone, we were able to house 3,300 households that year alone. Our initial allocation was $9.5 million, which we exhausted within just 2 months, which caused extreme pressure on our shelter system. In response to extensive advocacy related to the pressures faced by the city, we received an additional 3 funding allocations that year, which exceeded $38 million. The success of year 4 demonstrates that when sufficient COB funding is available, we can make significant progress at reducing homelessness. This graph shows the number of homeless individuals that moved into permanent housing from Toronto's emergency shelter system as a result of 6 of our key housing programs. COB housing outcomes are represented in dark blue. You can see that in April 2022, when we introduced the shelter relief stream as our primary referral pathway, housing outcomes from the shelter system increased substantially. COB quickly became the leading pathway out of homelessness for shelter residents. On this slide, I want to demonstrate what happens to Toronto's emergency shelter system when COB funding is not available or there's gaps in between program years. Remember, COB housing outcomes are represented in dark blue. This chart shows that when COB funding is available, we can house more people with COB than all other programs combined. But when the funding is delayed or exhausted, housing outcomes drop sharply, as highlighted by the 3 red boxes on the screen. These delays make service planning extremely difficult for staff, community partners, but most importantly, they disrupt the lives of Toronto residents who rely on COB to gain access to safe and affordable housing. To ensure COB reaches those most in need, the City of Toronto has identified priority populations based on provincial guidelines, vulnerability, and systemic barriers to housing. These include people experiencing chronic homelessness, survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking, Indigenous persons, seniors, people with disabilities, youth, and veterans. We work with over 140 referring partners, ranging from city-funded shelters to Indigenous and gender-based violence organizations. These partnerships are the foundation of our success. We meet with our partners monthly, sector organizations, and provincial ministries to share updates, gather feedback, and refine our approach. The City of Toronto has a meeting in the middle engagement strategy and action plan that was co-created with the City and Toronto Aboriginal Support Council to foster a better relationship between the City of Toronto and Indigenous organizations. We work closely with the Toronto Indigenous Community Advisory Board to ensure that COB decisions reflect Indigenous priorities. Every year, 20% of our COB allocation is set aside for Indigenous households. Despite our best efforts to improve access to housing, Indigenous people continue to be overrepresented amongst people experiencing homelessness in Toronto. While they represent just 3% of our population, they account for 9% of those experiencing homelessness and 31% of those living outdoors. And I will now pass the presentation on to Richard.
Thank you, Dawn. There we go. Okay, so for COB recipients leaving homelessness, securing housing is an important first step, but maintaining a successful tenancy and remaining housed is just as important. So the COB team works on a number of areas to support these goals. The first is supporting COB applicants throughout the application process, but also while they're receiving COB to ensure housing stability. We provide bridging grants to cover first and last month's rent, And these grants can be picked up within 24 hours to help quickly secure housing opportunities. Also, the city has 11 housing help centers across the city where residents can obtain help searching for and securing housing, but also support resolving issues with landlords to ensure successful tenancies and avoid eviction. Additionally, referral partners are encouraged to offer available housing-focused client supports to shelter residents that might need additional support in helping them adjust to their new home and resolve any issues that may arise. And lastly, we also engage landlords directly by providing COB information sheets to prospective landlords and, wherever possible, matching COB recipients with available affordable housing opportunities in our portfolio. So once housed, COB recipients must complete an annual renewal process to continue to receive their benefit. That's very important. If that's unsuccessful, they lose the benefit with no chance of reinstatement. What this involves is submitting a renewal form and filing income taxes for household members aged 17 and older. So to support our renewal strategy, we've developed very strong relationships with a number of key stakeholders, including all of our referral partners, Toronto Shelter Support Services, Toronto Indigenous Community Advisory Board, staff from Ontario Works and ODSP offices, the housing-focused client supports workers, and also connections to free tax clinics. These partners support outreach each year to Toronto's COB recipients to ensure that successful renewal. And as of June of this year, there were 7,800 COB recipients. And with the help of this strategy, we were able to achieve a renewal rate of over 96%, which is quite good. Or at least we were pleased with it. Okay, just to talk a little bit about data. Data is really at the heart of the city's COB implementation strategy. Our team includes a dedicated research analyst who helps us to track outcomes, identify gaps, and adjust our approach. Through program data analysis, we've been able to identify and prioritize underserved populations, refine referral pathways, and quickly reallocate benefits to meet emerging priorities. For the program, really, data is more than just numbers. It's an important tool for equity and for impact. In addition to data, our program is very much shaped by the voices of our community partners. And we do this through regular meetings and surveys with referral agency staff, but also sector organizations. And through that communication, we've identified gaps, we've made adjustments on how we deliver the COB program. And there's a few examples there of some of the successes we have. I can speak to a few. One was we were really hearing from a lot of people that survivors of domestic violence with special priority program status on the centralized waiting list were reluctant to accept COB because of the requirement to come off the centralized waiting list and lose their SPP status. So we were able to join a number of others and successfully advocate to change that rule. And it was made, I think, in year 4, or just after year 4. And the change resulted in an increase in referrals from the gender-based violence sector from less than 1% of the total in year 4 to over 5% in year 5. A few other similar programs for underserved populations is it was brought to our attention that there were a number of families that were waiting for shelter space for extended periods of time in something called the bridging program. They were being put up in hotels or even Airbnbs, which is fairly precarious. There was no supports, no case managements. And so we launched a pilot to provide an access pathway to COB directly from those spaces, and I think we were able to house 58 households that way. Just really quickly, a few other underserved populations were long-stay shelter users. Although the minimum eligibility criteria is 6 months of homelessness in the shelters, what we were noticing is that shelter residents who had been there 12 months and more were underrepresented, and so we launched a pilot to really focus on getting COB to some of those residents. And then the last, we heard this a lot, is we provide a bridging grant, but for OW and ODSP recipients, they have to also access the Housing Stabilization Fund, and it kind of created this redundant, repetitive 2 processes in a row, very time-consuming, and sometimes they lost out on housing opportunities. So we were able to work with our counterparts at Toronto Employment and Social Services and streamline and combine those 2 processes. So just some examples of paying attention to our partners. Okay, well, I think Dawn spoke about it a little bit, but one of the biggest challenges we face is the gap between COB program years. Demands on the shelter system remain fairly constant, so whenever we have these gaps, it causes extreme pressure to build up as housing outcomes are substantially reduced and shelter system outflows are also decreased. So one of the things we did to address this between year 5 and year 6 is we implemented what we called the COB transition program, payment program. We used $4.8 million of municipal funding. And the way it worked is eligible applicants would receive bridging grants to cover first and last and monthly transition payments equivalent to COB benefits. And if you remember that slide, it was the light blue bars on the far right-hand side. And we were able to achieve a flow of approximately, 120, 130 households per month while we were waiting for COB. And then once year 6 opened, all of those recipients were enrolled into the COB program. So what happened next is, unfortunately, our year 6 funding was significantly reduced. The city received just $7.95 million, which is just a little more than a third of what we received the previous allocation. Also, that came with a maximum of 610 new households to be provided with a COB benefit. We had already used 570 through the transition program, leaving us with just 40 benefits for the remainder of the year. We expect that to be depleted fully by November, which will leave the city without access to COB benefits for at least 6 months, including the winter months. So where does that leave us? Let's see if I can make it move. There we go. So we're facing some pretty significant challenges. The reduced COB allocation has made shelter service planning very difficult. We continue to be challenged by multiple pressures on the emergency shelter system, including responding to encampments, supporting shelter sites that are being decommissioned due to cuts in funding from other levels of government. And needless to say, winter is fast approaching, and our service planning will have to account for increased demand and limited resources. So that brings us to another important element of our work, and that's advocacy to other levels of government. Intergovernmental collaboration is essential to sustaining housing benefit programs and scaling their impact. We need, ideally, consistent funding, clear and open communication, and a shared commitment across all levels of government. Our data shows that COB works, but we need consistent provincial and federal investments to ensure best possible outcomes. So just to summarize, our experience in the past 5 years of implementing COB at the City of Toronto demonstrates that housing benefits can be very effective at reducing homelessness. A few key lessons learned: community partnerships and meaningful collaboration are essential. Intergovernmental, I choke on that word. Intergovernmental advocacy for consistent and sustained funding for housing benefits programs is more important than ever. Good data collection is essential to identifying and meeting the needs of underserved populations, as is good, strong communications with your community partners. And then also throughout the process, engaging Indigenous communities in decision-making about program design and delivery, that needs to be a priority. So that brings us to the end, and we'll be happy to respond to any questions at the end. But thanks for your attention.
Thank you to our friends in Toronto. I'm just going to open up our last presentation. All right, so last we're going to hear from our friends in Ottawa. We'll be hearing from Ron, as well as Angela. Ron is a program coordinator with the City of Ottawa's Homelessness Programs and Funding Unit, where he supports a range of initiatives aimed at preventing and reducing homelessness across the city. With 35 years of service in municipal government, Ron has held a variety of positions within the Community and Social Services Department, bringing extensive knowledge and practical experience to his current role. And then Angela serves as a program coordinator with the City of Ottawa's Homelessness Programs and Funding Unit, where she plays a key role in monitoring and advancing initiatives aimed at preventing and reducing homelessness throughout the city. With over 25 years of experience as a social worker deeply engaged in Ottawa's homelessness sector, Angela has held diverse roles as well, from frontline shelter work and clinical case management to training, course instruction, policy and program development for vulnerable populations, homelessness data analysis, and steering citywide housing strategies. So we've got two folks who are going to speak to you now with a ton of experience to bring forward.
Awesome. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. You enjoying your day? Awesome. Okay, again, my name's Ron Mattias. I'm a program coordinator with Housing Services. One of my portfolios is to share the administration of the Landlord Damage Fund program, and I share it with this lovely person here. I will pass it over to her in a second, but I just want to pre-warn everyone, we have a test at the end of our presentation. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to suffer a very judgmental glare from Angela. Okay. So the Landlord Damage Fund was initiated in Ottawa in November of 2018. The program is an initiative which was created by the City of Ottawa to help address the challenges of finding and keeping affordable housing for people who are exiting homelessness. Many landlords are hesitant to rent to Housing First recipients for many reasons. Some recipients are dealing with mental health challenges, we have addictions, and many other challenges. So the program ultimately assists landlords with financial monies to contend with damages. That's ultimately what it is. It's been very successful, and I'm going to pass it over to Angela.
Hi, folks. How are you doing at this very end of day session? If any of you have that end of day glaze going over with your eyes, if you need to get up and move around or leave, but then please come back. by all means, go ahead. As Ron said, I'm also one of the program coordinators at the City of Ottawa's Housing and Homelessness Services. I do help administer our Landlord Damage Fund. So we're going to go over, I realize we should probably actually look at slides and not just talk or do interpretive dance. And Ron wasn't joking about there being a bit of a test or more of a little quiz. It's a little interactive piece. So please do pay attention or you will get my mom glare, for sure. So we are going to just kind of cover what our Landlord Damage Fund program is all about, how it supports some of the gaps and helps people retain housing and builds those relationships with our community partners, including our landlords. So you're going to notice Ron and I kind of going back and forth, so bear with us. So back to Ron.
The webpage up.
The website?
Apologies, we'll just be an hour.
No big deal. Yep. Okay.
Beautiful, and it's on here. Almost there, everyone, almost there. So what we opened up is the City of Ottawa has created a website that breaks down the parameters for the Landlord Damage Fund program. And I figured based on time, it's probably the best use of our time just to go through this website very quickly. So are we on the right slide? Eligibility. So for landlords to be eligible for the Landlord Damage Fund program, the tenants must be a part of the Housing First program. I won't go into significant damages because there's a slide coming up for Angela. I don't want to steal her thunder on that. Could we get to the next one?
The next slide.
Yeah.
Sorry, let's-
What you need to submit a claim?
Oh,
I wasn't joking about an hour. If I didn't have Angela, I'd be completely lost. Okay, so number 3. Oh. Oh. Lisa?
Lisa.
Sorry, Lisa.
I hope I can help.
Get out of your way.
it won't let us actually interact with the webpage.
Oh,
So
okay.
change it.
Here. This would be a much better.
Does anyone have a joke? Did anyone see the game last night? Did anyone stay up till 3 a.m.? Yes? Who stayed up all the way? Not me. I was in bed by 9:30. So,
I'll get you to
Excellent.
click for me. So we're on eligibility. So for a landlord damage fund submission, landlords need to submit a document that's called a move-in, move-out checklist. And ultimately what that checklist does is it's completed at the initial occupancy when a tenant moves into their unit, and it identifies the condition of the unit, like all the rooms in the unit. And when a submission, when a landlord damage claim submission is given, there's a move-out portion. So it shows where the damages are. They also need to submit a landlord damage claim form, and this form identifies the client, obviously. We have to validate their Housing First tenant. It identifies what the damages are, okay? And photographs, very important. What we had done up to very recently with claims is just accepted the remediation photographs. So after the repairs were completed. But right now we're trying to manipulate, that's not the right word.
no, that is
No.
not the right word.
Collaborate with our housing partners to take photographs at initial move-in. And based on the amount of claims that we've received, many damages don't only occur within the tenant's unit. It also occurs on the exterior of the building. It could be in common areas. So we want photographs that move in and move out. Pretty important. The estimates, you could read them up on, you were able to read up on the screen.
This is going, our tech is really teching right now, but that's okay.
Oh, Mr. Tech guy. Sorry.
That's okay. You'll also see this lovely link for the website, which we'll also be able to provide you with afterwards.
Sorry about that.
We need to be able to interact with Chrome.
I mean, look, verbatim,
Okay.
ultimately, the amount of
Thank you.
estimates that are required are premised on the total amount of a claim.
Thank you.
Okay, so for like $1,000, one estimate needs to be submitted. Ultimately, before anything could be approved, a landlord should not be completing repairs unless it's an emergency, of course, like a plumbing repair or a broken window. But beyond that, they shouldn't be doing any repairs until the city offers approval. So next one is apply. Awesome. Try that again. Awesome, perfect. So landlord damage claims should be initiated with the City of Ottawa within 28 days. That's within 28 days of a client moving out of their residence or within 28 days of a landlord becoming aware of damages. If any of the forms that I alluded to previously are required, we also have our own centralized mailbox for that. I'll move to what's next. So once submitted, Housing and Homeless Services staff, Angela, myself, and another colleague who isn't here, will assess the claims. There's many times, no claim is standard. Every claim is individualized. So there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of dialogue that occurs with landlords. Sometimes there's requirements for us to do inspections, to go out to the units. Far and few between, but we've learned that sometimes the program itself may suffer some level of challenge. Okay? So we do inspections as well. And once we get the receipts and everything's approved, we then do an offer letter, which is a signature sign-off by the landlord, and then a payment could be issued. And that's basically it.
All right, back
Yeah.
to this. Okay, so we covered that. Actually, I think we need to go back. Nope. So, you're seeing, okay, you can see our fake notes, which is no notes here. Thank you, my tech friend, my new best friend.
Thank you.
So as Ron was saying, in terms of eligibility, just to build on that a little bit more, we don't have any pre-existing conditions that a client must meet or a tenant must meet before they're able to kind of be eligible for claims for this program. So it doesn't require them to be hooked up with substance use support or mental health support. We do hope that they have a housing-based case manager attached to them as kind of part of our Housing First program. But we don't need them to be doing all those things. We recognize that, having this housing is, essential to kind of creating this foundation for them. We want people to be able to kind of pursue their personal goals, improve their quality of life, all of those kinds of things, while being able to hopefully retain their housing a little bit longer than they might naturally without this fund. So we do need that the damages need to be done, obviously, before the claim is made. It needs to be, as Ron said, within a certain period of time. And it's damages that are usually done either by the tenant themselves, it could be their guests. We do recognize that there might be home takeover situations as well where that could happen. And sometimes, in the most rare of occasion, they are, again, pre-existing conditions where that's where we're really kind of pushing for some of those, before and after photos so we can kind of verify the state of the unit and that it wasn't necessarily the tenant that broke off their bathroom vanity sink. It was perhaps half off already. So the things that we are covering is not regular wear and tear. It's not normal day-to-day stuff. It's not cleaning or, dents in the paint or minor drywall repairs. It's like significant damage is like that we like to call it. Sorry, I should go to our next slide. So you may be able to see some of the details. We've included a few of our random damage photos to kind of illustrate that it's not just regular wear and tear, that it is some pretty significant things. Some have been pretty minor. We see a large spectrum of different types of claims. Someone, it might be a cracked window when they were moving and they accidentally bashed, the edge of their couch into a window or a door frame. And we have other ones where literally the apartment burnt down to a crisp. And, what are you going to do about that? So it needs to be as well, like, is it willful? It's not just like it was an accident or, an oopsie. It is careless, think of all the most negative kind of connotations that you can. Like we're trying to kind of pay for those kinds of really significant things. And just, when someone's like, the dog peed on the carpet, is that something that you'll compensate us for? Chances are not, because that's probably a regular occurrence of having a pet in a home. The repairs and any reparations do need to be kind of similar. So we need it to be kind of modest. It needs to be of similar quality to what was in the unit before the repairs, of course. And we always let landlords know that if they want that opportunity to do some sort of upgrades, that we would pay for kind of that base cost, and they would pay for any initial or additional costs to kind of go from green shag carpeting to oak floors. I'm stealing Ron's analogy from an earlier time.
That's okay, I'll get you back.
Of course you will. But as Ron said, each case is not, we don't have kind of a, perfect, this is the perfect example of a case. It really is individualized, looking on a case-by-case basis and making sure that we are assessing everything possible. So you'll see, again, there's a variety of pictures. If anybody wants to see some more pictures, come on up afterwards or reach out to Ron and I. And I'm going to pass it back over to Ron.
Oh, that's wonderful, thank you. So, the program, we've had rising participation, and it'll be in the next slide that Angela goes over with you as well. And you'll see, the extensive amount of money that's gone into the program. I'll just add one point to your next slide. Keep in mind right now we're actually coming to a point where we're almost at $500,000, and we run a fiscal year in damage claims. The city continues to adjust funding and support to meet the demand. Okay, it is city funding, it's discretionary funding that supports the program. The feedback that we have received from landlords and agencies generally remains very positive and really supports the housing first model. Contributes towards eviction prevention. In most cases, housing first landlords are retained. So it's really important to note that even when damages occur, we've maintained and retained a lot of landlords, which helps with the inventory of our housing stock. Okay, so it's really had some very positive impacts since 2018, since its inception. Okay, in the next slide, you'll see I don't want to take it from me.
Thanks. So this chart shows just a really quick and dirty summary of our claims and the total amount that we paid out over kind of that fiscal year. So if you kind of take a look again, we only have stats right now going back to 5 years. The biggest jump you'll see is that kind of middle year, the 22-23 year, where the amount of claims increased by 84%, and the amount that we paid out was 251% increase, which is a real strong indication of the need for this type of program. You'll notice if you kind of continue looking that the 2023, 2024, while it had, almost double the amount of claims, the amount paid out wasn't, it was like $1,000 more. So that kind of shows, at least it gives us an indication that the value of the claims was slightly less for that year. And this year, again, it's gone up a little bit, but we have paid out 22% more than the previous year. So as Ron said, it is discretionary funding, but we try and advocate as hard as we can to continue this funding. We know how important it is to our community and to our landlords to have them feel support. And we see it as a really clear success. And it's really reflected in, obviously, the notable rise in the claims. And it demonstrates that landlords are feeling that they're able to get that support when there is damage in their unit, or, again, it's not always that the tenant is being asked to leave or being evicted. That tenant or that landlord is often willing to work with that tenant a lot more, knowing that there's that kind of financial support to kind of get the unit back to the condition that it used to be beforehand. So we're really proud of that, strengthening that housing stability, reinforcing our commitment to, housing first, collaborative practices, all of that. And Ron?
Yeah. I mean, you basically said everything on this slide, but regardless, the continuation of the program, it really continues to evolve. And, myself and my colleagues are working really hard to meet the demand. It's administratively intensive, but it's done so for a reason, right? We have to maintain due diligence. Every single one of these claims is subject to audit as well. So we need to ensure all the T's are crossed. The city really remains committed to continuing the program, and, in due course, we don't know how it'll evolve, but we're hoping it'll expand to support many more clients as well. So we're at the point now where the test is, and we're going to pick people. No, we won't. We'll go through questions one by one.
Okay, so this is going to be real easy participation. Do you want me to take that off?
No, that's
Okay, so we're going to ask you questions. If you think that it is true, the answer is true, please raise your hand, or a thumbs up, or jazz hands, whatever it is that you prefer. Spirit fingers, anyone? Whichever. But anyway, put your hand up in some sort of way that feels comfortable to you if you feel that the answer is true.
So the first question, okay? The Landlord Damage Fund will pay out for any tenant-related issues. Do people think this is valid? Raise your hands. False? You failed.
This is also another colleague from the City of Ottawa.
She knows the answers. And you're up next.
All right, the Landlord Damage Fund will cover damage from normal wear and tear. True or false? Yes, boo. That's right. Yes, exactly.
Okay, the next one. A landlord can apply for reimbursement even if no attempt was made to recover costs from the tenant. True? Okay, I see some, yay. No, it is true.
Awesome. Photos are required part of a damage claim. True? Okay, yes. All
Awesome.
winners. Excellent.
Now, claims must be submitted within a certain time frame after the tenant moves out. It's a trick question. So, landlord damage claims could be submitted whether a client moves out or is staying in the unit. Sorry about that. That was Angela's fault.
Yep, absolutely. The fund is only accessible for Housing First or supportive housing clients.
True. Good.
Okay, final question.
The fund, Landlord Damage Fund, covers unpaid rent in addition to property damage. Well, you guys aced it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You are saved from our glare. Here is our contact information, and I'm going to leave this one up. This is a slide with all of our contact information for all three communities. So thank you so much, and I'm passing it over to Lisa.
Thank you so much. So we'll move on to questions now. If you have a question, just raise your hand. And I'm not sure if we have a microphone to give to folks. Oh, you're pointing somewhere. Oh. Okay, we will bring a microphone around to you if you have any questions. So we'll take the first question over here with the beautiful red glasses.
Thank you very much. Very informative. Great work. Honestly, congratulations. I just wanted to come back, maybe like to zoom out to the title of the session is like successes and lesson learned in using financial housing supports to reduce homelessness. I think maybe personally I was drawn to the financial side, and then across. I just feel like my question is about sustainability, right? For example, the City of Ottawa, your program is great, and I'm almost like maybe scared it's going to be too popular, and then it becomes like an insurance product, but insurance product have like, there's a cost, and then like, but it's just going to be a funding that's like, is going to be popular, but somebody has to pay, quote unquote, right? Same thing for the Canada, Ontario housing benefits. It's like, I'm just torn between the marginalization and vulnerability of the populations we're serving and the logics of a financial system and how money works, especially like in the times that are coming ahead where everybody's saying like, you gotta squeeze. So my question is, how do you see the sustainability of, all that you're doing, especially like the City of Ottawa and the City of Toronto? Thank you.
Okay, these are on. I wasn't sure if this microphone was working. Thanks for your question, that's really great. Answering on behalf of Ottawa, you brought up a really good point about the insurance product, and it's possible that it could get too popular and people might think of it that way, but we like to think of ourselves as kind of a relief from making an insurance claim, because we have heard from a number of our landlords, for example, that if they make too many claims if they own multiple properties, that their insurance will get canceled. So the option to perhaps submit slightly smaller claims with the city versus, their entire place burnt down and that's it. We're happy to be able to help with that when we can. Should there be kind of a max cap to make sure that it's sustainable? Maybe. Right now, we're kind of just going with, do we have the budget? Do we have the need? And we cross our fingers and toes, and we hope that every year is going to continue to be funded properly. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your sustainability, but I'll pass it over to my Toronto colleagues.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And the numbers that you saw up there in terms of the allocation that the city gets each year, what they don't tell is the cost of sustaining the benefits of households that have already been receiving it. And that's being paid by the federal and provincial governments. So that's part of the whole budget. So you're right, it's significantly, it has high sustainment costs. Just for perspective, however, it's even at its highest benefit level per month, is about $1,300 per month. It's still significantly cheaper than the cost of keeping someone in a shelter. And then for that bridging program where families were being kept in hotels and Airbnb, we did a back of napkin calculation and found just the 58 households that we moved with COB was saving the city something like $100,000 a month. So I would agree with you. When the numbers that you saw in year 4, that 38 million, that's not sustainable. But it was essential at that moment to respond to exceptional pressures in the emergency shelter system. So I would say housing benefits need to be part of the toolkit, but we can't rely too heavily on them. Yeah. Does that? Yeah.
All right, just in the middle there with the black sweater on.
Hello. This may be answered at some point when I stepped out, but I'm just curious on what it would look like for you all to kind of coordinate and communicate for folks that you're supporting who are like repeat users of your service. So if you have folks who are not graduating off of the subsidy program, or somebody whose landlord repeatedly needs to come ask you guys for support with damages. And then from the frontline perspective, like what does that look like? And have you had success with people graduating off of your subsidy program, I guess is my other question. Like what's the impacts of people who don't get that funding anymore?
As far as like, to your point about repeat, kind of people that we're supporting that are kind of in and out of the shelter, I think we do our best. It kind of goes to optimizing those matches again, and we're able to stay involved once people are housed in the community. So we do stay involved as a third party. If there are ongoing issues, like our team will be there to help deal with them. And if it's not a great fit at a certain unit, we can help with the rehousing plan as well. You know, if it's a room rental and there's conflicts with the roommates, we can be involved and try to get them into an apartment or, you know, transition them somewhere else where we're still avoiding shelter. So we're very mindful of that. We also do good tenant agreements with everyone that's leaving our program. It's nothing that's binding, but it's just something that we kind of go over and you know, outline with the people that we're supporting before they're moving in. So yeah, we're really mindful we're there as a third party, and we're trying to, you know, make other options work to avoid shelter. So hopefully that answered your question there.
And from the City of Ottawa, it's sort of a twofold response. So we do have many landlords that have multiple units that rent out to Housing First recipients. There wouldn't be any cap against landlords because we want to retain those units and make those units available. On the flip side, though, if we have tenants who are multiple damages, completing multiple damages. We do have resources in play with our Housing First agencies, the HBCMs and the housing specialists, and we would ask them to be engaged with the client and come up with case planning to see if independent living is actually viable.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, when the city first considered using COB to support shelter residents to leave homelessness, we consulted with other service managers who had done the same. And one of them remains nameless. Is there anyone here from Hamilton? No? Okay. But they shared with us their experiences. They had used it in the first year, but found that a lot of people ended up back in the shelter and learned that they needed to provide more support. So when we decided to do that, we put a big emphasis on the renewal strategy, but also, informing, educating the site leads with our referral partners around appropriate referrals. Yeah. So, and I think our renewal rate's typically 97%, so it's quite good. Yeah.
And the average for the province is, I think, 10%.
10%
fall off the program.
Rate.
Yeah.
And do they fall off the program just because they no longer need it, or they don't meet the eligibility anymore?
That's a good question. So the 3% that do fall off of our program, it's some of them income out, which is the goal, and some of them move out of Ontario. And then some of them don't renew, maybe they're in the hospital, jail, there's a lot of other reasons. And then some of them just fail to renew or do their income tax. But it's a small percentage, and we try every year to make it better. Thank you.
So this is a question for Ron and Angela. Matthew from TI actually sent you an email for this last week. So hello.
I'm sorry I didn't get back to you yet.
No worries. I've used the program before and it's been great. But the question I've had is kind of a two-parter. The first one is the city, when I first went and tried to go through this process, basically said no, because without even sending you guys an email, because they're like, client should have had tenant insurance. So I don't know if you guys want to speak on that. And then the second part was, when I went to the city and asked about the damage fund, they basically said, city doesn't do damages. We don't do damages.
That must have been Angela.
And I was just like, and that was a crisis worker. I then spoke to a crisis manager, like 95% sure that this fund still exists. So I just didn't want to, just curious if there's maybe like a lack of education with different people within the city, or I don't know if you guys could speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's very possible. There's, to be fairly honest, we work in a very busy environment. There's lots of silo effects happening. But by all means, whenever you have queries about the Landlord Damage Fund, please send them to the Landlord Damage Fund mailbox, because that'll be directed to the appropriate authority. Yeah, and then we'll be able to address it. But please do pass on information for misinformation from other city departments. We've geared a lot of our education towards our community partners, not thinking we actually had to engage internally. But it's a very good point, and thank you for raising it.
That's sorry, that's a great question. While all tenants are encouraged to have tenant insurance, some of these clients do not have it, depending on their particular situation, and we're again trying to be mindful of the fact that a tenant may need to make multiple claims depending on their particular situation and the supports that they have in place and their readiness to live completely independently or with whatever level of support that's required. So we don't want to make it seem like we are penalizing them and making them go through their own insurance claims, which often comes with its own administrative giant red mountains of red tape. So that is something that, I think that we're going to give further consideration to in the future, though, about what that looks like. But for now, our main goal is trying to maintain that relationship between the landlord and the tenant and making sure that they're able to sustain their housing. The landlord is happy and continuing to work with that client and with our community and with our housing-based case managers and our housing first agencies. But very valid point and food for thought. Thanks.
Hi. I apologize because I was only able to attend the presentation of Ron and Angela, so maybe it was clarified at the beginning. But I want to know if the participants, who benefit of this guarantee of their tenant, were required to follow workshop or support following an incident on the maintenance of housing, or, for example, on the problem of accumulation, to prevent and to cut the pattern.
Yeah. So we do work with our housing first agencies and the staff who work with them, and we collaborate and meet with them on a regular basis. There's expectations within that program for them to have regular engagement with their clients. In the event of a landlord damage claim, we're not always asking them to re-engage with the clients, because that's a primary expectation as it is, first of all. But if we do have like a serious consequence, then we would definitely reach out to the Housing First agencies and ask them to engage with the client. Does that answer the question, or? Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure, thank you.
Thank you. Those were all really great presentations. I actually have questions for both kind of Richard and possibly your colleague from the University of Toronto, and also for Ron and Angela. The question for Toronto is kind of the level of rent subsidy that you set. Like if the rent subsidy is set too low, you end up only being able to access really low-quality buildings and getting a concentration of clients in one building, which sort of goes against the Housing First model, which wants to scatter people. So are you able to set the rent level high enough that you really can do like scattered site in many different places in the city? And relatedly, if you do that, kind of do you notice that landlords then have an incentive to increase the rent? So that's my question for Toronto, and I'll quickly say my question for Ottawa. It's easier to say, like, I'm a little bit surprised that the city would take on the job of managing this repair funds. Why, this is a program design question, why don't you give that money to the teams like Options Housing or whatever team provides Housing First, so they can they already interact with the landlords, they know the details of what happened. Why don't they just manage the repair money directly? So those are my two questions. Thank you.
So I can start. Are you from the University of Toronto? Is that what you said?
Sorry, no, I'm from Eric Latimer from McGill University.
Oh, okay. The reason I ask is we have a lot of really, really good data, and we've been wanting to do some analysis of it. So I'll just speak quickly to the benefit level. First of all, it's set by provincial program guidelines, so we don't set it. And it's a little bit of a complicated subsidy calculation formula that is based on an average market rent. So it's the difference between 30% of someone's income or their social assistance shelter allowance and a local average market rent. So it tends to skew towards kind of low end of market rental, but it is intended to be equivalent to rent geared to income. We've done a bit of a heat map because we have all this data, and it shows a fairly even distribution of access to housing throughout the city. We also did a bit of a check on whether they're finding units in apartment buildings or secondary rental or that type of thing. And again, there it's fairly evenly distributed. On the issue and the concern about rent inflation, that I think is a valid critique, and our experience has been that there's some evidence of that. The first year of the program, the average monthly benefit was about $750 a month. And after 5 years, into the 6th year, it's more typically about $1,300 a month. And I think there's a couple of things behind that. One is the province allowed some service managers to put forward a business case to increase the average market rent that they would subsidize to, and we did that on 2 occasions. The second is that in the first 2 years, we were selecting recipients from the centralized wait list, so they were mostly in situ tenants. They were already sitting tenants. When we moved to the shelter relief, they had to access new tenancies. So they were running up against asking rents as opposed to sitting rents, and those were significantly higher. So I think that's what our experience is, yeah.
Okay. So with respect to the Landlord Damage Fund, there's actually multiple points. why we don't have our housing partners administer the program. Like I alluded to before, every submission claim that's finalized is subject to audit. We have the subject matter expertise to assess each claim. There's a lot of back and forth that happens. It's heavily administrative. And there's a lot, well, I shouldn't say that, everyone's aware of it. There tends to be a lot of transience or turnover within the housing agencies, so they would lose that expertise even if they established it. So it's a few city staff that are involved. It's not our main portfolio. We all have multiple portfolios that we manage. But having three of us, it also allows us to readily respond in a very timely manner and make good assessments quickly.
I think we have time just for one more question.
Hello. Question for Ottawa in terms of, and Angela and Ron, I should call you by your names. In terms of retention rate, in terms of the actual units, so you pay for the damages and repairs, is there a percentage of those landlords that actually keep the units in with Housing First tenants? What's that percentage? I'm really curious in that.
Great question again. So many great questions. I wish I had a solid number to give you, so I'm just going to make up 96%. Which Ron's
I'm
going to
okay
say.
with estimates too.
Yeah, but honestly, I can't say that it's 100% of landlords, but we do see the majority of the landlords that are part of our community are continuing to work with the clients and continuing to offer those units. Sometimes there is a tenant who might not be the best fit after a period of time, so they might part ways with that particular tenant, but it's really great when we get to see that they're still willing to kind of offer that unit to another Housing First client, perhaps. So it is dependent, and do you have a more precise number than my guesstimate of 96%?
No, not at all. It was a very good answer. I mean, many of our landlords are landlords that are sustaining within the program, that hold multiple units and are re-renting to Housing First recipients. Yes, there are a few landlords that are not retained, but they're usually single homeowners or single unit owners.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you so much for attending the session, everyone. Hope to see you at the reception shortly and hope that you had a good first day of sessions. Thank you.